It's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Today we're in the San Gabriel Valley. Glad to have Kevin Hunt back. He is the general manager of the Central Basin Municipal Water District. Before we talk about the Central Basin, I want to talk about the drought. And I'm kind of a nerd. I read studies, and I remember reading a study last year at this time. It was from the American Geophysical Union, which said that we have the highest cumulative deficit in 65 years. It will take 4.4 years to get out of our drought. That would take us to 2019 based upon the study of 2016. But many people say we're out of drought. So what gives? Are we out of drought?
Right now we are, for the moment.
How? How is it that we're out of drought already?
Well, we had probably the wettest, up in Northern California, was the wettest year on record.
Okay.
And so that's put a lot of water in storage. And we've also had a fairly good year down here. But we're just one dry season away from going back into drought.
But let's talk about that distinction between Northern California and Southern California, because like you said, Northern California was just wetter than ever. Southern California, yeah, it felt it. I live in SoCal, we felt it. But it really, begs the question, was it enough? Was it enough, even though Southern California was not as wet as Northern?
We still have deficit in our groundwater basins.
Okay.
So they're going to take years to fill up.
Okay. So let's stay tuned on that. We'll see what happens drought-wise. Hopefully this upcoming year will be as wet as last year. Let's talk about the Central Basin. Before we go into some exciting developments, what is the Central Basin Municipal Water District?
We're a wholesale water supplier. Excuse me. We have, we're a member agency of Metropolitan Water District.
Okay.
Serve 1.6 million people in Southeast LA. And we import water from Metropolitan, and we also provide recycled water service. We also provide conservation service, school services, and water outreach to our communities.
In Southern California, the Central Basin MWD is one of the more significant players in the water space.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some exciting changes at Central Basin. I see you smile. I say exciting because the last couple of years have been a bit rocky for the Central Basin. There was a state audit, the state legislature got involved, but those days are behind us. So let's talk about the new day at the Central Basin. And I want to, before we talk about the makeup of the board, I want to briefly talk about some other policies that were put in place through the Senate side. Obviously, both houses passed, but the Senate did codify some policies to try to avoid the challenges of the past. Briefly, what did the Senate do?
Yeah, Senator Lara sponsored the bill. And
Ricardo Lara of the Long Beach area.
And it specifically tightened the procurement policies of the district, prohibit sole source contracts except under specified conditions, tightened the reporting and the transparency. And it was we worked very closely with the state auditors as part of their part of it.
Right.
And so most of it was in place by the time the bill passed, but it codified it and made it now so that it's it's more than just being a board policy,
Right.
It's a state policy.
Why was that important?
There had been abuses in the past to, contracts that were not done properly, and those led to misspending of public money. So that's
fair enough.
Yeah.
So in addition to what the Senate side focused upon, the Assembly side also got involved. In this case, I believe it was Christina Garcia,
Yes.
who represents, I believe, significant portions of your communities. And we were looking at the makeup of the board. You are a full-time staffer as a general manager, but there are elected water boards. And, we think about the good old days in the West where, water boards were king in a lot of ways. The railroads were king. And so we're trying to kind of get away from that Wild West mentality. I think that's part of why the state legislature got involved. So before we talk about the new changes, how had the Central Basin Municipal Water District Board been structured?
5 publicly elected directors that by division.
Okay.
And so each represented 300,000 to 400,000 people. It's a responsible position.
I mean, that's, state assembly districts are 400,000 or 500,000. So you're representing a lot of people if you're an elected member of the Central Basin MWD. But what the state legislature said is we need to look at this makeup because it's not working. Like you said, there had been, I think you said abuses. Yeah. And the state auditor was pretty firm. I mean, she made 32 audit recommendations. So clearly something was going on. So let's focus upon what the Assembly Bill 1794 did. It changed the makeup of the Central Basin Board.
Yeah, and it actually addressed a problem that exists in all wholesale agencies, because while you're elected by the public, you get your money, and your real constituency is the agencies that you serve, the retail agencies.
Oh,
So
I see, right.
it was actually, when the Assemblywoman proposed this, it actually does make the district responsible to both of its communities. So her bill requires that we have 3 appointed directors. We keep all 5 elected directors
Okay.
until 2022, when it decreases to 4. So ultimately it'll be 4 elected, 3 appointed.
So this seems to be a significant sea change. I'm not familiar with many, if any, water boards where they're appointed members. Am I right? I'm sure they exist. I'm just not
Very
familiar.
few. Castaic Lake used to have them.
Okay.
Orange County Water District does, but they're all elected officials from cities that are appointed.
I understand.
But there are very few in the state that are appointed and elected mixed.
And so is this the wave of the future? Because what you described, aside from the challenges of the Central Basin, I just wonder, maybe we should be looking at this generally, because like you said, if you're being elected by the voters, do your clients, which would be the water agencies, have involvement? Are they able to weigh in?
And no, that is a struggle, and I mean, I've done this for a while, both in
Right.
this district and elsewhere, and you work as a manager with the retail agencies that you're serving, and wholesale agencies occasionally, and the board should be working with the people, and then we hopefully combine the policies
Oh, I
to
see
make
what you're
it work.
saying. Right, right. So the
But,
staff is
yeah.
more focused on the agency side, the electeds on the
And of
public
course,
side.
the problem is there's never enough resources to serve both constituents.
And the reality is, for better or for worse, if you're an elected water board member, the compensation is virtually nil. And so, help me.
No, it's $232 a meeting plus benefits, one meeting a day, maximum 10 meetings a month.
Okay,
So
so I
it
guess
does-
it could be. Okay.
And if
so-
it does get to be significant.
Okay, so could someone make a living? And I say this in the best sense. I mean, could it be a job? Being elected a water board member?
No, it's not a full-time
It's
job.
not a full-time
No,
job.
no.
So that presents challenges because you're trying to serve the public, but it's not a full-time job.
Yeah.
And how many jobs would allow you to take 10 days off to go to these water board meetings? And so that presents. Okay, so the 3 new appointed members, despite some challenges that you faced, are in place.
Yes, they are.
And how is that going?
Actually, it's going very well. I mean, they're very experienced professionals. One, Bill Gedney, is a vice president of water quality at Golden State Water Company. Second, John Oskewe is the assistant city manager at Downey.
Okay.
And the third, Mark Grajeda, is a general manager of the Pico Water District. For all experienced managers and working full-time jobs. They have not accepted any compensation, although they're entitled to it
I see.
for the position. And they're making an effort to learn, and
Right.
but they come at a different approach.
Of
than
course. In our last moments, though, I do want to ask, there are 8 members of this body. 8 isn't even number.
Yes, it
Is
is.
that a problem?
You have to get to 5.
Okay. So a 4-4 is
Is a tie.
a tie and a no action.
Yeah, and it's interesting. 4 is actually, you cannot have 4 directors meet. That's a Brown Act violation because they can stop something even though they can't approve it.
His name is Kevin Hunt. He is the general manager of the Central Basin Municipal Water District. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're so glad you're joining us on Local Edition.